Here's an interesting video about Death Note.
28 minutes, Rashleaf. 28 minutes.
Light Yagami was a hyper-intelligent and very bored individual who one day stumbled upon a special notebook where, upon reading his conscience, learned he could kill anybody by simply writing their name down and knowing what they looked like. With a Justin Bieber haircut and the ego of an anime YouTuber, Light was practically chosen by fate itself to be a pretty terrible guy. These actions of deciding when others lived or died based on Light's own moral code and choices will put him to an...
As a matter of fact, I'm kind of scared to show this because I think somebody got banned on Twitch for watching Death Note. Can I show Death Note on stream? I remember there was a streamer that got banned for watching Death Note. You said, I mean, it's a YouTube video? This guy's toast was fake? Oh, his DMCA was fake? So what he got banned for? Watch Code Geass instead.
Intellectual boxing match against the greatest minds on Earth, whether those minds be the international police, the FBI, or the great...
Oh, this is what the video is? Who was truly smarter? Light versus L? I'm gonna say L was truly smarter. But the only reason why Light won is because he had the Death Note, and he had Ryuk, the Shinigami Eyes, Misa, Rem, all that extra shit that factors in. That's the reason why L lost. L lost because L is just human. The amount of resources Light had against him, where he brainwashed Misa to become his slave, and then he made Misa get Shinigami Eyes so he doesn't have to get Shinigami Eyes. And then he also used Misa as like a scapegoat, so then Rem had to do whatever Light told her to do. Because I remember when Rem was at a point in the anime where there's like this saying where that a Shinigami cannot fall in love with a person in real life, and I think Rem was in love with Misa, so Rem would do anything for Misa. But Light had Misa like this. He was like, bro, I have her, she'll do whatever the fuck I want. And yo, it's like L, he lost. You said L lost because Light was built different? No, he lost because Light had way more fucking resources. She already had the eyes. She just believed hard that the other Death Note user was her soulmate. Yes, she was an idiot. Nier was so mid. I ain't gonna say he was mid. I ain't gonna watch this whole thing because obviously we already know who's truly smarter. I am not gonna watch a damn near 30-minute video when I already know L is smarter. You said Light was an L for not clapping Misa. Facts! Like at least once. At least clap once. He didn't even want to clap. But you know what? Let's watch a little bit of it actually.
Detective of all time, L
Let's watch.
And his superhuman successors, Nier and Mello. Due to Light's ego and boredom, he was thrown directly into conflict with L.
Mello was also done dirty.
Seemingly considered secondary to catch L for opposing him and humiliating him at the beginning of the series. But throughout all of Death Note, every clash, plan, and trick they had, the entire cat and mouse scandal, who was actually the smartest? Who outsmarted who the most? Did Light outsmart L more? Was it vice versa? Maybe Nier or Mello ended up catching the most victories in the end? Or maybe Ryuk is the smartest for manipulating the whole show and even tricking the Shinigami King was actually stated to have immeasurable intelligence. Anyway, I wanted to actually make
what
up
did
for
that
manipulating
say?
the whole show and even tricking the Shinigami King was...
And even tricking the Shinigami King, the King of Death, the most powerful being in the Shinigami realm. The leader of the Shinigami realm, he must be very old because the Shinigami refer to him as Old Man. He seems to be in charge of keeping track of Death Notes, but little else about him is known. Maybe he's too incredible for humans to comprehend.
Was actually stated to have immeasurable intelligence. Anyway, I wanted to actually make a pretty objective video on who was smarter. Now, most people just kind of theorize, but I actually just wanted to, like, objectively just count who actually outsmarted the other the most. So we will be going through the first half of Death Note where L and Light actually do scuffle, and then at the end, I'll be giving my own opinion on who I think is smarter, so enjoy. Light receives his death note and begins writing down numerous names and killing numerous criminals via heart attacks, while the international police speculates on if there is actually murders being committed throughout the world, or just a series of coincidences. A call out on national TV is made from a man named Lindell Taylor, directed towards Kira, Light's killer identity that the public made. Light kills this Lindell Taylor on TV without a second thought, and the real L uses this to deduce that Kira is real and in Japan, and eventually ends up cornering Light due to this later. Light admits he made an emotional mistake here, and I don't blame him for not expecting someone like L to exist, but it is still L's victory here, as L is also battling something the unknown as well, which is the Death Note, which he has no knowledge of. In the battle between Light and L, it starts off with a 1-0 in L's favor. From here, Light needs a way to save his ego and a way to attack L back, in which he starts this by first allowing L to catch on to the fact that he is a student. Not only will this allow him to get closer to L, but it also starts to make L investigate the police, as Kira clearly has information only the police should know. If everything goes perfectly, L will either have to reveal himself, or the police will catch L for Kira. By making the police and L suspect each other, a conflict emerges where nobody trusts L, and L is forced to reveal himself to gain their trust back. L considers this Light's victory, and the score is now 1-1. L now proceeds to use the FBI to chase after Light, and while dealing with his pursuers, Light proceeds to create diversions that actually tricks L. He creates a bunch of note cards that have literally zero meaning that L will ponder on, while Light proceeds to murder every FBI agent in Japan and catch on to L's plan. Light also ends the FBI support of L, while L just sits and stares at cards that don't do anything. It is now 1-2 in Light's favor. L theorized that the cards were possibly a distraction, but didn't fully realize it until after the fact, and even then he went back on his words and thought it was real once he realized they had a fake meaning. L also sweats in the scene for one of the only times in the whole manga due to Light making fun of him, basically. I actually originally thought he never had a smear mark, which is a sweat mark on L's face throughout the entire manga until I reread this, showing just how...
The art?
I actually originally thought he never...
Who drew this? Well, Takeshi Obata? The art for Death Note? Chef's kiss. The art cannot be touched in this damn...
had a smear mark, which is a sweat mark on L's face throughout the
so
entire manga
fucking
until I reread
good.
this, showing just how embarrassed L was for this scene. Not only did Light completely eradicate the FBI supporting L, but he made the FBI admit they were spying on the police, which helped corner L even further, and then he was forced to reveal himself. He also outsmarts L and foresees that L would check the sending order of the FBI names and faces to their potential killer, and makes the order of them being sent random so L can't follow him as well, therefore catching on to L's thought process. At this point, L admits Light and him have closed the distance between them, and the game really begins, which sort of proves that Light actually did outsmart L here quite a few times. This introduces us to a scene in which L then probes Light's room with cameras and bugs to watch and listen to his daily activities to see if he is Kira. One of L's plans is that he'll display a message that says 1,500 detectives are coming to Japan on TV while Light and Sayu are watching to see if he can get a reaction out of them. However, Light easily sees through this and just makes fun of L out loud instead. He even had a stash of lewd magazines just in case something like this happened as well. Light begins his final step into ending this probing sequence, which is the famous potato chip scene. Now, I have my own problems with this scene, like, what if someone in the house just decided to eat barbecue chips that day, even if they never really liked the flavor before? Maybe puberty is changing Sayu's taste buds and she just doesn't mind barbecue chips now. How would Light ever know? Regardless, it does go his way, and he's able to sneak a mini television inside a bag of barbecue chips. After Ryuk tells him where all the cameras and bugs are inside of his room, Light maps out perfectly how to watch TV through his barbecue chip bag without ever being spotted. Now, this scene is very, very underrated for Light's intelligence. Most people just focus on how goofy it is, which it is goofy, I don't blame them, but this scene is actually extremely...
I forgot. Yeah, that scene is ridiculous. Now that I'm thinking back on it, there was like 20 cameras in his room, and somehow he stayed watching TV inside the chip bag. He put a mini TV inside of the bag of chips and was watching the news, and whenever like a criminal popped up in the news, he would just write their name on the book and then just kill them. So then L is probably looking at the surveillance like, how the fuck is this guy, like, he's like thinking to himself, I'm suspecting him of being Kira, but how is people still dying and he's not looking at the TV? You know what? I gotta give Kira some credit here, man. Kira was a monster too.
Impressive. Now, not only does Light have to watch TV and write names down through a potato chip bag, but he has to do this while keeping in mind over 64 bugs and cameras watching his
I said 20 cameras. 64 cameras. 64 bugs.
every move and making sure they can't catch him being weird, while also simultaneously acting like nothing is suspicious while writing in the bag very slowly, while also practicing for his entrance exams on a level that convinces L, a superhuman genius that also understands psychology, that he isn't acting or doing anything weird. On top of this, the TV also has no sound, so he actually has to look very particularly inside of the bag to see the names on TV, and then write them down slowly and remember those as well. Anyway, Light gets away with this, and that TV in a bag gets trash compacted without anybody ever finding out. At least until later when Rem makes a slip up and L theorizes that Light used a potato chip bag. Light is able to steer away L's probes, and L is none the wiser, while also convincing the police he is a clean person. This makes the score 1-3, as Light outsmarted L numerous times in this one little mini arc alone, with L really doing nothing in return. L actually begins to think Kira might have the mental of a divine being after this because of Light's insane acting ability and performance. It's very difficult to say that Light did not get him here. After this, L has taken a new step into catching Light, as Light has made too much progress. L hasn't really made any counters. But both L and Light agree they will have to meet or get closer to each other to eventually win. They can't win anonymously. During his endeavor to meet Light, L passes an elite college entrance exam while at arguably 40% deduced deductive ability due to his thinking being at its peak depending on his sitting
Free toes?
posture, which he wasn't allowed to use during the exams. This is also kind of interesting because when Light beat L in those earlier scuffles and fooled him, L wasn't in this prime position, meaning he was caught off guard while possibly nerfed by his posture, if you want to say that's a possible argument. Although it could also just be a joke and he could just like sitting like that sometimes instead. As some may know, L acts a bit differently when he's not surrounded by people or in his own thoughts than he does out loud or in public, although the L backstory secret chapters does imply he is still a bit of a weirdo. Anyway, L then corners Light and straight up admits he's L to him in public after saying his name was Hideki Ryuga at the exam, a famous Japanese pop star and actor. This is for one so that if Light tries killing L and uses the name Hideki Ryuga and accidentally thinks of the pop star who he did see on the TV while under surveillance with Sayu, then he would kill the pop star and L would know Light was responsible because only Light would think that L's name was Hideki. It's also good because if this L, who might not even be the real one, dies, then everyone would immediately know Light was Kira, and then the real L in the background could just get—
Yo, that scene was so intense. Just looking back on it, like imagine the guy trying to like, and it was very early on in the show. He was just like, I think you're Kira. And I was like, yo, he just straight up told him. And then you already know when the silhouette of the colors happen, it's like red and the blue and the red. Oh my God, it's untouched.
get Light. Kira admits L got him pretty good here, making the score 2-3. Preceding this, the two then have a friendly tennis match, which outlines the idea of how everything should be—
You saw Ryuk? Why Ryuk look like
making
that?
the score 2-3. Preceding this, the two then have a friendly tennis
He looks so dumb. Bro.
match, which outlines the idea of how everything should be analyzed and scrutinized in Death Note when concerning L and Light, and determining if every little action has any meaning between the two. They have to be hyper cautious, and this tennis match is a prime example of that. The tennis match ultimately doesn't have any meaning, but the two think of their ideas of how to confront each other and both think of pretty much the same exact things while doing it. Now, a funny note for those that are actually familiar with how intelligence or IQ works: Light, despite being very, very rusty, ultimately beats L here, who is also rusty, which may outline a higher body kinesthetic intelligence since they're both just good at the game of tennis. However, for this video, we're not including those types of intelligence, nor do I think anybody really was anticipating body kinesthetic intelligence or athletic intelligence, or more so taking their plans against each other and who can catch the other more than that. Following the tennis match, both of them go to get drinks, and during this, L gives Light a deductive reasoning test in which he tricks him with a card that was fake that Light didn't write, but he acted like Light made it. But Light also doesn't fall for L's plan of trying to make Light mad by creating fake cards, these cards being what Light used to trick L before. So Light does see through L's plan here, but it doesn't really mean anything, nor would it have mattered if Light got mad anyway. However, this does corner Light into working on the task force so that L can monitor more of his movements without surveillance, but this works in Light's favor as well, and Light is able to confirm L's identity through his father, so no one really won here. A new Death Note then appears, a new Kira, and this is when Death Note somewhat loses a bit of its flavor for a lot of people and becomes more about power rather than just quick wits and deduction. After Misa, the new Kira, gets manipulated by L to not try to force L to appear on TV and meets Light in person, Light basically obtains Shinigami Eyes, which is the ability to see anybody's true name and lifespan just looking at their face, and a second Death Note. Considering L doesn't even know what the Death Note was to begin with, and still has no idea about many of its rules, Light gets a huge power-up here. But not exactly. While in theory, Light has more abilities and tactics he can now employ, Misa is a bit of a liability. She's not the smartest one in the room. Misa doesn't overthink every little detail to the point she is having a 300 IQ breakdown of the meaning of hitting a ball around a court or saying, let's have coffee. Misa just isn't as strong as Light, and both Light and L know this. You can kind of see it like a video game where you play through a bit of it, get the feel of how things work, and then when you finally start getting some of the more upgrade and getting the hang of the game turns into a giant escort mission when you have to protect someone else. Before they meet, Misa makes a good meetup. Getting the hang of the game
Bro, she did not move. Yo, she just straight took the truck.
A giant escort mission when you have to protect someone else. Before they meet, Misa makes a good meetup plan by saying they will show notebooks in Ayama.
She took
with a
that
club
truck.
called Note Blue existing there. Al being blue and notebook being the keyword. Light is able to deduce this and L isn't. But you could say that this is just because L doesn't know notebook is a keyword. Regardless, Misa tricks both Light and L after finding out Light's identity using Shinigami Eyes and just giggles and runs away somewhere. This will also lead up into the power discussion we'll have later, so keep in mind Misa just tricked Light and L using power, even though she's not as intelligent. Misa eventually messes up a few times, not only revealing that Shinigami exists to the whole planet on live TV, but she is apprehended by L and the task force as being the second Kira for leaving evidence of her guilt behind and not realizing. Normally this is annoying, but not a huge problem for Light so long as Misa doesn't talk, and it doesn't seem like she really will. She seems to rather go insane than say anything. But Rem, Misa's Shinigami, steps in and tells Light that if he doesn't come up with a plan to save her, she will kill him. This isn't all Misa's mess up, as it's implied that Light somewhat screwed up and didn't account for Misa's thought process when making the notes or the tapes to send, which is a weakness he tends to have in general, assuming people will act almost as optimally as he thinks when he commands them or gives them an order. So now Light has to go out of his way to trick L into releasing Misa and convincing them she is innocent while not looking guilty himself. But L is out for blood. Not only did he apprehend the second Kira, but it's becoming far more detrimental for Light than he could ever imagine. L is able to deduce Misa's past of having her parents' killer killed by Kira and her sudden close connection to Light that borders obsession. He is also able to deduce that Light is too prideful to carry, say, a personal cute cell phone around just for Misa as two lovers. L prepares to call in Light as a prime suspect as Kira. After a lot of acting from both sides, many days of self-imprisonment, and a brilliant plan to convince L that the power of Kira is a curse that possesses and transfers to others that the user can't kill, basically a bunch of BS, Light convinces L to let out both Light and Misa from confinement, despite the overwhelming and pretty much objective evidence that Misa is the second Kira. This is a huge win for Light, especially considering he was forced into this situation by Rem and would never do this normally. The score is now 2-4 in Light's favor. Nier does say later that the task force pressuring L is probably the only reason he would ever let Light and Misa free, but L himself, when we actually see him monologue, is actually at a loss and doesn't know anything he would have done in the situation, and even actually gets depressed later. Even Nier later in the series, L's successor, is very surprised by many of these things, and probably wouldn't have handled them well either. So if Light can make L depressed and almost give up through his acting ability and his plan, it's definitely a Light W. While L can't confine Light or Misa any longer, he still assumes that Light is Kira but without his memories or powers, and assumes that Light will use this to somehow get an advantage on him, which is correct. Light also, while now a good guy, can't be guilty of really anything except hiding information he thinks could convict him of being guilty when thinking, such as how he has memories of the bus jacking and Ray Penber still. Now, he begins his path to befriend and get closer to L and chase down the new Kira that Rem created as per his request. Something I don't ever see brought up really about this situation is not that Light is just a good person, but Light in this quote-unquote good state also doesn't really have much of an ego, especially compared to L or bad Light. Due to this, Light makes a lot of breakthroughs that L can seemingly not due to the wall of his ego preventing him from such. There's a lot of popular videos and discussions about Death Note online that go over how Light could have gotten out of his situation against Nier at the end.
They're saying is Light Yagami a villain? I guess they're saying he's a villain because he's killing people, but he's killing criminals. He's killing like fucked up people, like people popping up in the news like this guy killed 10 people. And now they didn't have enough evidence against him, so they're gonna release him in a week. So Light be like, oh hell no, this guy killed 10 people and now they're gonna release him in a week? Say less. Then he writes their name down and he kills them. He only killed criminals. He never killed innocent people. You say he killed innocent people too? Later on though. I'm talking about early Light, like episodes 1 through like, I don't know, 10 or some shit. The beginning. But later on, because I feel like he started killing innocent people when they started trying, when they tried to start apprehending him. Like they started looking for him. They try to bait him out. They try to see who is the killer and shit. You said, you mean 1 through 3? Bitch, I don't know, bro. I haven't watched Death Note in so many years. I'm just saying 1 through 10. I don't know. He killed an FBI agent and his wife within 15 episodes.
And so on and so forth. And what a lot of people point out to is that Aizawa could literally just be Kira, and everything would fit very well. Aizawa is constantly questioning Light the hardest, could easily have set him up, and seems the most aware of the situation, and is the one who tries to convince Nier that Light is suspicious and to go for him. The reason I bring this up is because L never even considers that the MPA could be Kira. He simply says they are too stupid to be questioned, and writes them off because he sees Kira as someone who should be very smart and challenging. Fun, even. But it's not very realistic. Are you telling me if L was on my case and I was murdering the whole planet, if I just play dumb, he just figures it can't be me and leaves me alone? Like, I understand the whole childish thing quite well, and I understand his reasoning, and he's not even necessarily wrong, but it's just interesting to point out that Good Light actually does theorize that an MPA member could just be Kira and not Light, whereas L doesn't even really try to think about it. So if Aizawa was Kira, Light might have a much better time catching him than L did. Just a fun thing to think about. Light also—
Where's Higuchi though? The Higuchi smile is everything about this show.
Admits in part 2 of Death Note that his ego and hot-headedness even is what eventually led to his eventual imprisonment by L due to killing Lindell Taylor when he didn't have to. So this is somewhat of a raw Light without that weakness. That tangent aside, L creates a fake execution for Light as a last-ditch effort to prove his innocence with Light's father Soichiro, which actually does fool Light since he's a good person now. One of the weaknesses of Good Light tends to be his naivety, and he gets tagged for this later by someone in the Yotsuba group. During this good escapade, Misa basically actually admits Light is Kira almost verbatim, so things maybe aren't going all perfectly well for bad Light, who's not present, but it's still going okay. L begins to get depressed.
Oh, this is where he kicks him in the face.
Light into making him believe Light was the real puppet master and that he actually wanted Light to be Kira. Once again, just imagine if Aizawa was Kira here. L begins to actually give up, and Light has to convince L they need to stop Kira. Together, they announce some feats that seem very similar to each other in the words of the MTA and people that can see them together all the time, and they seem to feel on a similar level as well. Rem says this as well later. Something to note here is that Light deduces that Kira can control people and kill them without heart attacks before L really kind of does, despite having to be on the case way shorter. This could be due to Light's memories of the bus jacking, but L didn't even deduce this when Light convinced him Kira could potentially curse reverse manipulate and change bodies, which is a bit weird. After more digging, the good Light finds the Yotsuba Kira before L does directly. However, you could say L wasn't really trying to find the Yotsuba Kira and might have actually just been depressed, so it might not have been a feat. But if you think L was just acting about his depression, then it would be 2 to 5 in Light's favor. Good Light also reveals he can hack into computers,
Bro,
revealing how
I'll never forget in high school when I saw a motherfucker actually do that shit. Like, they were actually on the phone like, hello? I'm like, you gotta put that phone down now!
Could have gotten into his father's police files when he was evil, which L notes. Once again, bad Light is on a real hard escort mission. Light then comes up with a plan to delay killings from Yotsuba before L does, and L fakes this by saying that Light should become his new successor to see if Light would latch onto it or the power, but Light doesn't fall for this and calls L out for being apprehensive again to everyone. And in L's mind, he knows that Light is planning to return his memories, but doesn't really know how yet. Here, L realizes as well that Misa might have gotten her memories back after Misa has a slight psychological shift, going from risking her life to do anything for Light to now preserving it without fighting back under Light's orders. This is something Nier and Mello don't really show an aptitude for later, which is like psychoanalyst. From here, L gets a pretty decent W against Light when he theorizes
they
that
did Mello so dirty.
Yotsuba Kira is talking to a Shinigami before Light can. The score would be a questionable 3 to 5 or 3 to 7, depending on what you take as wins. Light finally gets his memories back after L and Light corner Yoguchi, and Light basically says he was accurately able to predict everything L would do when he lost his memories. However, Light is also shocked when he realizes that L hypothesized that he simply lost his memories and could regain them. There's now a nether power amp, but liability, which is Rem, is now on the forefront, helping Light, but being public to the task force. She actually slips up and gives L a few clues, which allows L to figure out Light's scheme with the potato chips, which I said earlier, but also allows him to clear his name with fake rules temporarily. However, the super detective calls these fake rules out immediately and challenges them outright to Light's detriment. This puts Rem into a direct position to being forced to kill L for him and die, thus removing the pain of both Rem and L from Light's side. This is Light's final and ultimate victory, but it's more of a victory over Rem than L. At the end of the day though, Light was able to manipulate his way to L's side, find the means to dispose of him, and get away with it. It's Light's victory at the end of the day. In the novels, which is L Changed the World, there's a alternate timeline where Rem doesn't kill L, and after Light is put into jail eventually, Light kills himself with a piece of the Death Note in his famous watch, making it so that L could never actually solve the Kira case or prove Light was Kira, and loses. This is similar to the plan a character named B, another Whammy's House successor like Nier and Mello did in the BB Murder Cases novel, where he planned to murder a bunch of people until L got on his case, and then kill himself so that L can never solve the case.
Damn, I didn't even know about that. So there was an alternate timeline where Light killed himself in the jail cell with the Death Note that was in his watch? That's crazy, just so he could purposely not solve the case. I did not know about that.
So it's likely that Light would have won the Battle of Pride even without Rem potentially, but he would have died in the process. But regardless, a very disappointing end. Before dying, L figures out that Light used Rem to kill Watsuri as well, and passes away. The score then ends at around 3-ish to 5 to 9-ish, depending on how strict you are with the wins. In terms of deducing each other's actions and countering them before they could get away with them, the score would be a solid 9 to 9. So it's 3 to 5 or 9, and then 9 to 9. So dead even in terms of that part. So Light pretty much wins, but is the score really the be-all, end-all here? The answer is not exactly.
Nah, you know what?
Showed that Light
I changed my mind, bro. L was not as smart as Light. Light was way smarter than L. I changed my mind. Because rewatching everything again now, I'm like, dude, Light was so calculated to even, like, you know, doing everything, like, because everything is starting to come back to me, where he had to manipulate people. He had to bury the books and then purposely forget, because I think, like, I forgot how the rules work, that if you get rid of the books, you lose all the memories of you using said book. And then it all landed perfectly in that one scene where when they found Higuchi and then he grabbed the book again and he got all his memories back. So it's like, yeah, Light was crazy.
Performed better than L, it doesn't include a very important piece of context. Later in Death Note, we have a new gauge to be made with Mello, Nier, L, and Light, in which L begins comparing L's successors to L himself. While Mello is certainly more dangerous and Nier was far more antagonistic and put more pressure on Light, Light doesn't seem very convinced that either are on L's level. And at the end of the series, that theory actually came true, and Light's deduction of Nier's intelligence is actually correct, in which Light would have killed Nier had Mikami not screwed up, which is one of Light's weaknesses I outlined earlier if you recall.
Yes! That's the only reason why Light lost. Light lost because of somebody else's fuck up. He ended up looking like you ever seen that episode of SpongeBob where he was like, like his eyes went straight like, yo, he was like, I'm sorry, Kira, I'm sorry. And then he literally called Light Kira in front of all the fucking police members. That was like the big conclusion where like he comes out the door and he was like, Kira, I got him. And everybody was there, but it wasn't the real Death Note. It was a fake Death Note. They were all supposed to die, But they didn't die because it was a fake Death Note. And Light is looking at him like, you motherfucker. You calling me Light in front of everybody here? Yo, I'm telling you, this anime is so goated. Anybody who says this shit is mid, like Long Beach Griffey will say some shit like that. Long Beach Griffey was like, oh, Full Metal Alchemist is mid, Death Note is mid, but Dick writes One Piece, 1,000 episodes of bullshit? Come on, man.
With most of the beats Mellow and Nier got on Light being because Light was, and I quote,
You said the ending in this show was mid. It was not mid, bro. The ending was sad. It was perfect. It was exactly what it needed to be.
Playing dumb. Now, while I admit that Mellow especially is very underrated and has some good arguments for being very OP, this video is just about Light versus L. Also, no, Nier did not manipulate Mikami into messing up like Matsuda's theory at the end suggests, where the theory is that Nier used the Death Note to make Mikami mess up, so it's actually a Nier feat. So,
you said One Piece got titties. There's a titty right there. So we good.
Because you can't manipulate someone that has the Shinigami eyes with the Death Note, a pretty basic rule. So Light was in fact correct about Nier's ability, but during the second half of Death Note we hear Light mention a very particular word that he didn't really mention in the first, which is power. Power, also known as the ability to do or act, capable of doing or accomplishing something, is how Light labels Shinigami abilities passed down to humans, whether it be in the form of Death Notes, Shinigami eyes, etc. If you have 2 Shinigami notebooks, you have more power. You are stronger than the person who has just 1 Shinigami notebook. Having Shinigami eyes gives you more power as well. What I'm getting at here is that Light's beats against L could simply be because he is more powerful than L due to the Death Note and his ability to cause things to happen, which Light seemingly admits. So even if Light and L were hypothetically even, or dead even, in their intelligence, which a lot of guidebooks such as the animation guide seem to suggest, Light simply has more power, thus naturally racks up more wins throughout the series. Light does use this mystery to his advantage many times. Now, while I do think Light genuinely did some insanely smart things, he would not have been nearly as dominant, especially at the beginning of the series, if he had no power to manipulate events to his favor. I think I'll wrap this video up with 2 more points that I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on down below. In the guidebooks, it's heavily implied that Nier's reasoning and cool-headedness are equal to L's, if not slightly higher due to being more cool-headed and relaxed, but L is still superior with his much higher ability to act surprised and move on
This motherfucker got stats? He got stats?
his own, with rivaling deduction and raw IQ. In terms of Death Note power scaling, if you'd call it that, it's kind of confusing. I mean,
Mellow.
it's a show, and you get the idea, brain power scaling or something, whatever. Anyway, if this is true, and L is better than Nier because he holds a set of attributes greater than Nier, even if he has like 1 less IQ point or something, then what's stopping Light, who basically has an equal level of ability to L in almost both stats, not just being greater than L due to his ability to do everything else better, whether it be his social ability, his acting ability, his body kinesthetic ability, his lack of reliance on his sitting pose, or weird habits he has to follow except for his lame haircut.
Get the toes away from
Light
me.
just not default to being superior in that regard in terms of overall intelligence or power level or whatever. But screw my thoughts. Now, while I think this is a good point to consider, maybe the author can shed some insight. When asked who is the smartest in Death Note, Oba himself says that he thinks that L is the smartest because the plot demands it. The only problem is that this might be kind of a joke. The reason it's a joke is that if you read Death Note, L is kind of more of a title and more than one person, and more than one person is technically L throughout the series. At one point, L is L, Light is L, and Nier becomes L as well. So even that answer is still kind of subjective, at least to the reader, which is fine. But maybe you could say that it proves that L was smarter than Light when they first met, then after the time skip, Light was the smartest and now Nier is the smartest or something. Regardless, I think I outlined everything that can be really said about this, and I hope you enjoy. I had to reread all of Death Note and basically just score every conversation as a W or L.
Look at that art. That art was so fire. The mellow art. He had the chocolate bar. He made me want to eat chocolate bars, man.
And I even
This man mellow
as well, which would actually double this video to like an hour long, but I figured people just were more interested in L versus Kira instead. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any other
great video. Great video. Delicious. Mellow in his chocolate. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This guy died in 2 episodes. What did you want? You wanted a 10 episode series of 30 minutes each and then like 60 seconds passing by realistically through the whole episode. You wanted some Hunter x Hunter shit. In Hunter x Hunter, they were just, they stalling the fuck out of that shit in Hunter x Hunter. Like the staircase scene, you know them running up the stairs? That was like 5 episodes, bro. That was 5 episodes. That whole staircase sequence, bro. You said, speaking of Hunter x Hunter, I don't know if I'm gonna watch anime today, but definitely, it was like, we watching it later. Boy, if you don't, boy,